Well, IU fans, look, we obviously know basketball season is around the corner. Matt and I are just as excited as anyone about it. But over the last couple weeks, your Indiana football Hoosiers have taken a significant step forward. Is it too little, too late, or is there something Hoosier fans can latch on to now between this point and the end of the season? Matt and I record a football podcast tonight. Basketball will be coming your way later this week. We're going to dive into the Indiana's win over Wisconsin on Saturday and so much more here on episode 312, shout out Chicago, of the Hoosier Sound. We're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Sunday, November 5th, 2023, where I am your host, Nathan Christian. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, look, you were at Happy Valley to see Indiana take Penn State to the limit, and then we watched the Hoosiers knock off the Wisconsin Badgers. It's still an uphill climb to bowl eligibility, but we needed to see Indiana turn a corner, and it's felt like that's happened over the last couple of weeks. What are your initial takeaways from Indiana's 2014 win over the Wisconsin Badgers?
Well, yeah, to me, it looks like the team has finally gotten rid of the shackles that was the former offensive coordinator. No, seriously, like
we're gonna say his name, Walt Bell.
I'm not even gonna mention his name. Like the offense still doesn't look great.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. Only scoring 20 points against Wisconsin. Wisconsin does have a pretty decent defense, and they've been that for quite a while. But still, only scoring 20 points at home. But the defense finally looks like it believes in itself. They pushed Penn State to the limit in Happy Valley. I was there. I was trying not to celebrate too much because I was undercover. But they gave the Nittany Lions all that they could handle.
Yeah.
And then this week went out there and kind of showed Wisconsin, again, Wisconsin's injured, banged up, having an underperforming season, but they showed up and showed Wisconsin who was boss, right? And I feel like this team can do that against the next three teams they play. I don't see why this performance against Wisconsin isn't replicable against an Illinois team that has a banged up QB, a Michigan State team that doesn't have a head coach, and a Purdue team that looks like they are possibly the worst Power 5 team in America.
Just out of gas, yeah.
So I like where the Hoosiers are at right now.
I do too. And, this is exactly
surprisingly.
This is exactly why Matt and I had told you earlier in the season that this roster was too good to lose so many games in lopsided fashion. Obviously, they took Louisville down to the end of the fourth quarter, but they had no business getting crushed by Maryland and Michigan and Rutgers. Of course, Michigan's a team you would expect to drop that game, but at the same time, for that one to be such a dominant Michigan win was frustrating, where Michigan was setting season highs in a lot of different categories. But of course, Maryland and Rutgers are the games we're talking about in particular, and then of course, barely fluking away past the Akron Zips in Memorial Stadium at the end of September. But we saw this roster, and Matt and I have seen a lot of bad Indiana football over the years, but this team wasn't at the level of those teams. The roster, the players, the too deep that they had at different positions, it was way better than the product they were putting on the field. So it's great to see that after Indiana moved on from Walt Bell, brought in Rod Carey after the bye week, they've made some adjustments. Indiana has scored the first touchdown in each of their last 4 games against all really good competition, all teams that are going to make bowl games, a couple of teams that are still contending for a CFP spot in Michigan and Penn State, in addition to Rutgers and Wisconsin. The first quarter looked really good for Indiana. That continued against Wisconsin, where the Hoosiers took a 7-0 lead after one. Brendan Sorsby connected on a touchdown, connected on a couple of plays. They're building up to his touchdown run to give IU the lead. You saw the dual threat of Sorsby take advantage there. Of course, you lost a guy like Omar Cooper during the first half, but at the end of the day, QB1, without a doubt, Brendan Sorsby went 19 to 31 for 186 and a touchdown against the Badgers. He didn't throw an interception. Indiana didn't turn the ball over. They were able to get some progress on the ground, even though moving it through the air was better. And you're seeing players now build off of prior successes and show improvement. You can't keep tearing it down to the studs every single offseason. Okay, you see some guys on this team now where maybe next year you can see them continue to build on this on top of whatever they do the rest of the season. Brendan Sorsby, of course, you have Jalen Lucas, who's only in his true sophomore season. Trent Howland, right? You don't want to see a new running back on that depth chart next year. Trent Howland, you want to see him take another step forward. The receiving crew with a couple of youngsters and Donovan McCulley and Omar Cooper. And we'll see what EJ Williams and DeKeys Carter can give you between now and the end of the year. This is how good programs do things. You can't revamp your entire depth chart every single offseason. I don't care how much you want to take advantage of the transfer portal. So seeing the Hoosiers now have some consistency, have some continuity, has helped them for a second straight year play their best ball in November. But at the same time, Matt, we know the situation. The Hoosiers are 3-6. They're 1-5 in Big Ten play with Illinois, Michigan State, and Purdue to come. There is a chance that they can win out in these 3 games. Wisconsin is tougher than any of the 3 teams on Indiana's schedule. What are the chances in your eyes of Indiana winning out and getting to a bowl game, or have they dug themselves too deep of a hole?
I think they've dug themselves too deep of a hole, but the fact that the conversation exists there, and that there's like some sort of belief within the fan base that this could happen, is a testament to how far they've come, right? But like, they have dug themselves quite the hole. Like, they should have closed out that Louisville game, right? And then this is even more of a conversation.
Showed up against Maryland and Rutgers.
Showed up against Maryland and Rutgers. They could have, closed out that Penn State game. They had an opportunity to do that as well. So now they've left themselves no margin of error, right? There is no room for any mistakes here down the stretch. So again, I think the chances are low, but the fact that the chance exists is crazy to me, because again, I thought this was a 3-win football team when the season started. Now you're looking at the schedule, looking ahead on the schedule. I see 3 wins, like what should be 3 wins. Will this team be able to close them out and actually execute and go on the road in 2 of those and win? That's yet to be seen, but they have the talent to do so. Is why it makes the season so frustrating, because it's like they have to put together 4 quarters in a game at some point where both sides of the football play well. They have to, because the talent's there.
It's there. And I think you keep watching this team and you keep saying, hey, look, at some point, can they put up a better product on the football field? And against Penn State, when it felt hopeless and you said, oh my God, this is going to be another 55-3 loss, they played their tails off. And a lot of times you sort of sweep, you generalize, people generalize and talking about a team playing hard. Indiana's played hard over the last couple of weeks. It doesn't matter if it's 1st and 10, doesn't matter if it's on the goal line, doesn't matter if it's a long down and distance. Aaron Casey has led the charge in that area, having 9 tackles against Wisconsin in the big win, 4 tackles for loss. He ended up getting 2 sacks, a forced fumble. He's the heart and soul of this defense, Matt. And it feels like every couple of years in the Tom Allen era, you've gotten one of these guys, right? T. Gray Scales, Micah McFadden. Now it's Aaron Casey. Cam Jones was that guy last year for Indiana. It's been that way for the Tom Allen tenure. And can Aaron Casey, I had never seen a player, single-handedly take over a game from the defensive side in a long time. We're talking about an extended stretch of play in the 4th quarter in a Big Ten game against a superior opponent. Aaron Casey took over like Tom Brady takes over. And so, in 2023, you don't see that out of defensive players in basketball or in football. But it's incredible, Matt. Aaron Casey's put in so much work in this program. He was not going to let Indiana lose this game. If I'm in that locker room, I'm following his lead between now and the rest of the year.
Yeah, I like Aaron Casey. I look, yeah, I think you hit on the head. Like we've had these linebackers in our program, right, that are good. Aaron Casey is yet another example of the type of player that develops under Tom Allen and his defense that is able to succeed and probably move on to the next level, right? Like look at what Micah McFadden was doing today for the Giants, right? Yeah. Big game for him. You know, they lost because they suck, but that wasn't because of McFadden. Like the talent is there on this roster, the development of players is there. It's honestly just come down to a lack of coaching cohesion and just a lack of complementary football, right? Like exactly. If you can have an offense that was able to move the ball at all with any consistency with this defense, they'd be an 8-win team. This defense by no means is as good as Michigan's or as good as Penn State's or as good as Ohio State's has looked this year, but they're just below them, right? They made Ohio State work in that game. They made Michigan work in that game. They made Penn State work, right? Every team they've played, they've made it hard on them. It's just you haven't had the offense to back them up.
And it looked like there was a stretch in that Wisconsin game as well where Indiana's offense had run out of ideas. But to that degree, they were still able to pick up a couple of first downs at various moments to keep drives alive and to really constrict Wisconsin's chances. I'm just going to say this right now. I know Braylon Allen wasn't available, and I know Chimere Dike wasn't available. But please, this is football. Players get injured. You've got to build a 2-deep, a 3-deep that you can trust. And Luke Fickell, if he wants to win at Wisconsin over the next few years, you have to have your backups ready to go. And you could tell yesterday the Badgers simply weren't ready to go, from the quarterback in Braden Locke to some of the receivers that had to step in for DK. The running backs were okay, but some of the defensive players really struggled to adapt and adjust. In fact, Tom Allen said even at halftime that Donovan McCulley was a matchup he was comfortable going to. Consistently in the passing game because McCulley just had that physical advantage over the corners that were guarding him. At the end of the day, Matt, you know, Brendan Sorsby is someone I want us to talk about because it's now been 3 straight games where he started. He has taken all the reps. You're seeing him show improvement. It's almost a total stunning breakthrough that having an answer consistently at quarterback maybe helps your football team. I don't know. Maybe I'm not the sharpest football tool in the shed, but you know, having a guy consistently get the call at quarterback one maybe does make a difference. And it's crazy because you sit here and you see that Brendan Sorsby in his career has played all Big Ten East opponents outside of Indiana State in week 2. And of course the Wisconsin Badgers on Saturday. It's been a high degree of difficulty for Sorsby, but you've seen him throw 5 touchdown passes since taking over as the starter. He threw 2 in mop-up duty against Maryland. He's only thrown 1 pick in the time that's taken place over the last month or so. This is a person who's not going to, you know, ever end up looking like a 5-star recruit, but he gets the job done. What are a few words that you have on Sorsby? He's got to be the guy the rest of the way, right?
Yeah, like just some consistency, please, at the quarterback position. I still want to see Taven like in the off season make a run for it again. I don't like again. I what I saw from him, I didn't think was deserving of a benching at all. Right, like I didn't think he was ever the problem.
Right.
But Sorsby has proven that he's also not a problem. Right. And again, you can see why the staff was having questions about who was the starting QB. And I've said on this podcast before, I didn't understand it. I kind of get it now. But again, I still feel like, to me, Taven gives the team, he's just got a little bit more edge to him. Like Sorsby, to me, just screams game manager, which is fine. If you want that to be your starting QB and that to be the offense to not give away chances and to not be the reason why you lose, that's okay with me.
Yeah.
But then you've got to build an offense that isn't explosive and instead is more methodical. Whereas we've seen in recent weeks the team isn't able to move the ball and then all of a sudden can get it in some decent chunks.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, I don't know, they just don't intersect for me.
The one thing I will say, though, is you have seen some explosive plays in the Indiana offense over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You obviously saw the deep touchdowns to Donovan McCulley and to DeKeys Carter against Penn State. You saw multiple 20-plus yard completions to McCulley, Carter, and Williams against Wisconsin. But with that said, obviously Taven Jackson is the guy with more upside. The way I look at it with Brendan Sorsby is he's carrying out the coaching and the preparation and the game planning of Tom Allen and Rod Carey to the field. Like, he's the one who's just able to go out there and execute what they want to execute on time, efficiently. And he's not going to be, I don't think he's ever, going to, I think Walt Bell commented he could see Sorsby in the NFL one day. Let's not even have that conversation. I think as far as Indiana University is concerned, Brendan Sorsby has shown exactly what you want to see in a quarterback. I see some hints of Peyton Ramsey in Brendan Sorsby's game, where here's a guy, he's tough as nails, he's a gamer, he'll run over a defensive back on a scramble if he has to. He'll obviously make the throws as needed in all three levels, short, medium, and deep. And again, I know the folks at Alabama and the folks at Georgia are never going to want someone like Peyton Ramsey as their quarterback. But in Indiana,
Georgia has that. That's what Georgia has right now.
USC, you name it. Like, you're never going to have someone like, I guess, hey, Georgia does it and it works. And it's been effective you're right. It's been effective for them. Brendan Sorsby coming in here could certainly be someone that gets Indiana to 6 wins on a consistent basis. I do want to tip my cap to Taven Jackson, who on social media has complimented his teammates. He seems like he's doing all the correct things behind the scenes. But Sorsby in particular, man, I've been impressed at the way he handled the benching at the start of the year. He clearly didn't slouch. He clearly didn't pout. He clearly went back to work. Mm-hmm. He was ready in case Taven Jackson had a rough stretch, which in the Big Ten East is obviously around the corner no matter who you are. And now he's come in over the last couple of weeks, and especially the way Indiana started games, I've been impressed. So I don't know if this is a guy you're going to see throw for 10,000 yards in an Indiana uniform, but between now and the end of the year, I think Brendan Sorsby gives you a shot to win in each of these 3 games. You might even argue that Brendan Sorsby is the better quarterback in each of Indiana's last 3 games going forward.
Especially if Luke Altmaier's out for Illinois next week. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where to go with the offense in the offseason. You got to get some transfers in for sure. But, like, again, there's still this season left for this team, which is insane to me. But, they have worked themselves and they've worked their tails off to get into this position. Now they just got to go and finish it.
You just got to go and finish it. So we've got 3 more games to go. Matt and I will talk about those final matchups. We'll preview Illinois a little bit. We're going to also talk about Tom Allen here in just a sec. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And the Hoosiers and the pros are doing big things. Hoosiers across the various athletics at Indiana University are doing big things. The IU women's soccer team is going to await their fate during selection Sunday on Monday, the selection show, I should say, on Monday. Of course, the Indiana men's and women's basketball teams are about to start action this week. The men's basketball team had a comfortable win over Marion in the exhibition finale. The Indiana men's soccer team got a big win in the Big Ten tournament on Friday night over the Wisconsin Badgers. So the Hoosiers ultimately dominated their rivals from up north. Very, very far up north over the course of the weekend. And then, of course, you saw Kyle Schwarber show up at Memorial Stadium along with the rest of the College World Series team from Indiana baseball from 2013. That was wonderful to see. I saw Griffin Oaks who former kicker at Indiana, passed exams to become a physical therapist, which is what you're seeing for a lot of players now if they're not able to make it to the pros, doing some big things in their careers. So all sorts of winning going on across the world of Indiana sports. Trace Jackson Davis back and forth between the G League and the NBA. You're seeing Eric Gordon and OG Anunoby putting up some big numbers this weekend. And of course, the Hoosiers just keep rocking and rolling in all different aspects. But folks, an important reminder, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound. Matt, a bowl game is in picture still for Indiana. They're 3-6 right now. Obviously, they got to win out in order to get there. Illinois is a 7-point favorite when the Hoosiers take on the Illini in this upcoming Saturday. The Hoosiers will probably be favored over Michigan State, and I think there'll be another situation where it's about a 7-point underdog against Purdue in the finale. Tom Allen has a big old buyout coming up at the end of this year. It's $20 million paycheck that Scott Dolson has got to sign if he wants to move on from Tom Allen this offseason. That buyout obviously drops to $7 million after the 2024 campaign. Indiana, this is just their third Big Ten win in the last 3 seasons. There were a lot of frustrations with Tom Allen as Indiana continued their losing streak, but things have improved since that Penn State game. So as you think of Tom Allen's job security going into this upcoming offseason, do you think it would be in Indiana's best interest to move on? Do you think Tom Allen's convinced Scott Dolson that he's got to stay on board through the 2024 season? Or do you think we need to wait and see what happens here over the next 3 games?
I think we need to wait and see what happens. It's like he stayed so loyal to staff that has just sucked the life out of this program. Whether it was, I'm not going to name names right now because I don't want to, but you know who they are over the last couple seasons, right? The obvious people to get rid of, and he's taken too long and he's been too loyal to them, which, to be fair, I kind of appreciate that he's loyal.
Yeah.
But again, they haven't worked out. So it's been, not in his best interest, right, to keep them around. So we're sitting here talking about this, and it just sucks because I know for a fact that Tom Allen, if given a good offensive coordinator, people would be talking about him way differently, right? The defense has shown over the years that they can compete with the best teams. It's just you haven't had complimentary football under Tom Allen for since 2020, basically.
You haven't. But that's also his fault, right? I mean, he's in charge of picking the OC. He's in charge of making the play caller. He's in charge of making sure he's got the right guy to run his offense. We made the point on this podcast before that for a defensive-minded head coach, you would think that job is almost easier because he's going up against offenses each and every week. He's game planning against offenses each and every week. So he should know the kind of offenses that can be explosive and that can give a Big Ten team difficulty. And that's been a real pain point for the Hoosiers outside of Kalen DeBoer. With that said, if I had to decide the answer to the question that I asked, which I should have maybe thought about this before I even asked, I would say I'm I would say I am in the boat of waiting the next 3 games to see what decision you come to at the end of the year. But I'm leaning towards Tom Allen staying for the 2024 season, especially in the context of the buyout. And you go out and you say, hey, Rod Carey, you're going to be the play caller. We're going to have that consistency, and we are going to do everything in our power. And you can't guarantee starting spots, but we're going to do everything in our power to bring back Brendan Thorsby, Jalen Lucas, and Trenton Howland, and Donovan McCulley, and Jalen and Omar Cooper, and you got to, of course, Carter Smith and Josh Sales on the front line. And you got to say, hey, look, there's got to be some carryover between and across seasons. Please, you can't have a quarterback battle between 2 or 3 different guys. that are coming new into the program. You can't have a battle at key positions where you're going back and forth in September and October. We know what the schedule looks like in 2024. If Indiana messes up those early games, they're cooked. You got to know your stuff. At the beginning of the season, you can't jeopardize a bowl bid by losing to Akron or in 2024, Florida International by getting taken to 4 overtimes. That's inexcusable. Flat out inexcusable. I don't think Tom Allen is still the head coach at Indiana if Akron makes the field goal at the end of regulation to win this game back in September.
No.
So I've got to wait and see what happens here over the next 3 games. But the way Indiana's played against Penn State and has played against Wisconsin and the way Rod Carey has scripted things at the start of the game, you're obviously going to be heavily involved in the portal. But of course, Taven Jackson's got to be a piece of this puzzle next season as well. Now, can you tell me that this is a program that's building upon a foundation rather than reinstalling the foundation? Now, all of a sudden, I can get into that agreement, get into that discussion. But let's face it, right? The buyout plays a big role here. Of course, Tom Allen, it's a $20 million deal at the end of 23. It's a $7 million deal at the end of 24. Indiana's going into an expanded Big Ten this upcoming season. I'm curious to hear what you all have to say. If you disagree with what Matt and I are saying and saying, hey, Tom Allen can't convince me between now and the end of the year. He's got to go, hey, we'll listen to you. I'm sure Scott Dolson is thinking about these things. But what, if any, consistency can you get? That's going to help Indiana because, as Matt and I have said, Indiana's been playing college football 101 throughout the first part of the season. They are learning concepts. They're putting them into practice for the first time in a game environment. You can't do that and expect to win in the Big Ten. You've got to build. You've got to go into 201, 301. You go watch Washington play. They're doing college football PhD work. All right, as far as their offense is concerned. All right, they're writing their thesis before many of those guys go into the NFL. So you can't be completely reconstructing your offense and firing positional coaches in the middle of the season, changing your play caller. You're just asking for trouble in that case. But make no mistake, Tom Allen's got to have the right guy calling his offense. Rod Carey's done a good job as far as the start of the game. And now we're looking forward to seeing what adjustments Rod Carey can make as far as during the game is concerned at halftime into the third quarter in order to help his team out. Matt, I think the question here a lot of people are wondering is at the end of the day, like, how much stock are you putting into this for Indiana, right? It's a good performance against Penn State. It's a win over Wisconsin where the Hoosiers played well for 4 quarters. They didn't run into a lot of tricky, sort of fluky plays as far as beating the Wisconsin Badgers on Saturday afternoon. Is there a potential here for Indiana to completely wet the bed in these final 3 games, go into Illinois and lose 44-17 like you did against Maryland? Or do you have the confidence that Indiana keeps this going to the end of the year?
I don't have the confidence that they keep this going. I can totally see this team showing up at Illinois, just unable to move the ball against the defense. Noon start, unable to move the ball. Defense gets tired. Illinois finds a way to run the football to get the win.
Bielema.
Yeah, that can totally happen. And in fact, it's probably what will happen in that game. Semicolon, however, comma. This team could also go out there, impose their will, and give themselves another week of hope that they can possibly get to a postseason bowl game. Incredibly, it's entirely possible.
Things have gotten interesting. I think this Illinois game's a tipping point. We're going to preview this in just a minute here in a little bit more detail. But first, it's time for a quick social media shout out where we're going to give a little bit of a tip of our cap to the various social media channels you can find us at. We use the same stuff for basketball, use the same stuff for soccer, you name it, baseball, softball, volleyball, and of course football here on all the sports at Indiana Athletics. You can find us on social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. On Instagram, Matt, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
You can find us there. The masses are just growing. So make sure you come and join our team and pay close attention to our content that we put out there. Live tweeting the football and the basketball games, putting out stories, all the fun stuff. We're going to have some analytics, some data analysis out there for you as far as men's basketball is concerned as well. So it all comes fast and furious now. The basketball season tips off on Tuesday night. Matt, the Illinois Fighting Illini are going to host the Hoosiers on this upcoming Saturday afternoon, Veterans Day, November 11th. It's afternoon in the Eastern time zone, but it'll be an 11 a.m. Central kickoff in Champaign. Of course, with the clocks turned back, it is what it is, but it's an 11 a.m. Central kick in Champaign on November 11th. Illinois is a 7-point favorite with an over-under at 41. The Fighting Illini are a little bit like Indiana, right? A slow start, really asking a lot of questions in the middle of the season. Who are they? What a disappointing season after their great year last year. They lost to Kansas by a lot, got crushed by Penn State at home, scraped by Florida Atlantic, wrecked by Purdue and Nebraska. But then the last 3 weeks happened. They went to Maryland and won. They lost a nail-biter to Wisconsin at home. They went to Minnesota and got a win. There's a bye week in the middle there where they made some key adjustments and clearly showed, cleaned out some of the stuff that didn't work. This Illinois Fighting Illini team, Matt, they are very hard to game plan for. You think about a team that typically balances run and pass. We may not know the quarterback that takes over for them, that takes the first snap for them on Saturday. It could be Ball State transfer John Paddock, who threw a 46-yard touchdown to win the game against Minnesota, or you could see Luke Altmaier, who came over from Ole Miss, and he's been QB1 all year for Illinois, although there's been some frustration with Altmaier as of late anyway. So when it's all said and done, Matt, Indiana's a 7-point dog. Illinois is likely going to have first-round NFL draft prospect Jerjan Newton steadfast, the thick of the defensive line. He's going to cause a lot of problems. A Michigan, Penn State-like defensive lineman in the interior there. What are one or two things Indiana's got to do to win this football game on Saturday?
Got to play smart, got to take care of the ball, and have to take the opportunities that is given to them. Again, this is a good Illinois defense. Good Illinois defense. So they're not going to let up a lot of yards. They're not going to let you run between the tackles. It's going to be a tough game. You're going to have to grind it out. But when you get one of those explosive plays, you got to put together a drive, right? Mm-hmm. That has to happen. You got to put together a couple sets of plays after a big play in order to make that drive worth it, whether it's coming out with a field goal or it's coming out with a touchdown. Hopefully they're going to have to take advantage of those opportunities that are granted to them by Illinois mistakes.
It makes total sense, especially because when you look back on the Illinois Fighting Illini, they have shown the propensity to turn the ball over a little bit. Altmaier had a pick that he threw against the Gophers back on Saturday. You're talking about the game against Illinois. Altmaier was pretty good, but there have been times, even dating back to the season opener, where Luke Altmaier is a little bit loose with the football, and Illinois really had a tough time sort of stringing together good plays offensively. But hey, as of late, they've really picked it up. It is interesting that you mentioned their defense. I agree that this is good defense as well. However, when you look at the numbers, they've given up at least 17 in every game this year. They've given up at least 24 in 4 of the last 5. And that a lot of that comes against a weaker Big Ten West. In fact, the only Big Ten East opponent they've played.
But that's the strength of their team.
Is Maryland. Yeah, I agree. That is the strength of their team. They're a balanced squad. The funny thing, though, is that Tom Allen, kind of like how he owns Wisconsin, he owns Illinois. And so, Allen is not lost against the Fighting Illini in his tenure. And so, hey, you lean on whatever you can when you're digging into this contest. I like your comment as far as taking advantage after you've made a splash play on defense or special teams, right? You've got to be ready to either take a dagger shot down the field with the receivers that you have. And as Matt and I have pointed out all year, Indiana's receiving core is talented and they are dangerous. Of course, you especially feel that way if Cam Camper is able to come back for this game against the Illini on Saturday and play some sort of role. But even if he's not, it's that group of McCulley and Carter and Cooper and Williams that can really do some big things as far as big playmaking is concerned. And then, of course, when you think about how to beat Illinois in general, even dating back to week 1 against Toledo, week 2 against Kansas, you've got to have a functional passing offense in order to get the job done. And so even the Wisconsin Badgers, when they went into Illinois and knocked off the Fighting Illini, that was a game with Braden Locke, threw for 240 through the air, had 2 touchdowns, didn't throw an interception. Will Pauling was really important in helping Wisconsin beat Illinois. Indiana neutralized Pauling a little bit on Saturday, and now the Hoosiers have to go out like they did last year when Connor Bazelak threw for 300 yards. And you've got to be able to take some big chunk plays against, to the face of this Illinois pass defense. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the Hoosiers can do there. For what it's worth, Illinois does have another home game after this, so it's not their senior day or anything like that. Indiana is going to go into Illinois Memorial Stadium, sort of in this middle of November type of situation, and see if they can come out of there with a victory. The Illini have lost 3 home games this year in Big Ten play. They lost to Penn State, they lost to Nebraska, they lost to Wisconsin, and in fact, they haven't even won a game in Big Ten play at home. So it's a little bit of a fluky thing. They are 2-1 on the road in Big Ten play. So that's how they've been able to snag a couple of conference wins. If you ask me, Matt, this is the tipping point game as far as Indiana getting to 6. I think if Indiana is 5-6 going into Purdue, I'm taking the Hoosiers to win that game, because that tells me the Hoosiers were able to turn a corner, play hard against Penn State, and beat Wisconsin, Illinois, and Michigan State to go into West Lafayette. At the same time, I heard what you said earlier and can see it happening as far as Indiana going into Illinois Memorial Stadium and just laying a big old egg, because, hey, the last couple of weeks were a little bit of a mirage. The Illini play with a little bit of an edge. They go out and they hit on a couple of big explosive plays. The defense does some big things. The offensive line is maybe overachieved as of late, and the Fighting Illini come out with a big win. So when it's all said and done, Matt, as you think about these two teams, who do you think comes out? Who do you think wins this game, and by how much?
I want to believe in the Hoosiers to win this game, but I also predicted the team to go 3-9 at the beginning of the year. And personally, I really like being right. So I do think that Indiana probably ends up dropping this game, and it basically ends the season there. It's just tough to play them on the road here late in the season and hope to get a result when you should have probably made it a little bit easier on yourself early on in the season. So again, I think Indiana probably loses this 24-17. And in a excruciating way, because that's the only way these things happen for Indiana football.
Oh, Matt, come on. Hey, you know what?
You can't tell me I haven't watched Indiana football. I've watched Indiana football for like 8, 9, 10 years now. Yeah, I know what's happening.
But Indiana football in those years kind of owned Illinois. And that's why I think Indiana's going to find a way to beat Illinois. And look, I get it. The Hoosiers have been painful to watch all season. But the first thing that catches my attention here is whether it is Luke Altmaier or John Paddock. Yeah. Neither guy is a dual threat quarterback. And so when I sit here, and yeah, Altmaier can run it a little bit, but he's not DJ Irons. He's not somebody that you're sweating out as far as keeping the ball on an option and running for 60, 70 yards in a game. And of course, Altmaier a little bit banged up after taking a sack at the end of the Minnesota game. If it's Paddock, he is a pure pocket passer. And so, I think Indiana has seen even against better pocket passers like Drew Aller, they're able to get the job done on a defensive basis. It helps their defensive structure when a guy can't bolt out of the pocket and run for 40 yards on any given play. Talia, right? I mean, we saw him. No one would consider him to be, Lamar Jackson, but he was able to run pretty effectively against Indiana in that game as well. Rutgers, Gavin Wimsatt, of course, was an absolute nightmare to defend for this Hoosier defense. And then I think about, it's going to be one of those games where Indiana keeps it close and keeps it close and keeps it close. And it feels like whether it's Penn State or Wisconsin, if the opponent can't hit you for those big explosive plays and put up 28 in the quarter, Indiana kind of fights through their sea legs. They get settled in. They gain a little confidence. Sorsby feeds off of that, especially in the first quarter. And then as the game goes on, the running game sort of picks up some progress. Josh Henderson back has made a big difference to this Indiana running game. Of course, can Indiana get Jalen Lucas involved? Can Indiana get Cam Camper back into the fold? That's both of those questions having been unanswered, I think are even sources of additional upside for Indiana. So especially as you see this point spread come down into like the 6s instead of the 7, and the over-under sort of push up to around the 43, 44 area, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I like Indiana winning this game. And I know that means on Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m., I'm going to be sitting here going, what in the hell were you thinking? But this Illinois team, I am just so sick of the Big Ten West. I am just so sick of that conference, that division. And with Illinois and with Purdue, I think Indiana, I don't know, Matt. I think Indiana can get the job done. How crazy am I? Is there any chance that Indiana does this?
There's a chance. That's why I tweeted about it, but I don't believe in the chance.
Is this the game Indiana's most likely to lose, or do you think it's that road game against Purdue?
Honestly, I think it's the home game against Michigan State.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have a feeling that they'll get this win if they do. And
maybe feel too good about themselves.
Yeah, just feel a little too good about themselves. And then
Michigan State out for revenge.
Yeah, we've owned Michigan State the last 3-4 years, right? And then they're going to start feeling themselves, or they're going to be feeling bad. They're going to be probably because they play what? Who do they play next week? Michigan?
Let me check. No, they've already done. They've already played that game. They take on Ohio State in Columbus.
Interesting. They'll be mad after getting their butts handed to them by Ohio State in the horseshoe and come down to Bloomington and be looking to lay some hurt on the Hoosiers.
Or
because Michigan plays Penn State this week.
Or Michigan State just waves the white flag and says, "Hey, we beat Nebraska. We're a week or two away from Thanksgiving. Let's just make sure that we can go see our families with all 4 libs functional." And they sort of coast to a 31-17 loss in Bloomington.
I like that. I like that version of events. It's just not going to happen.
Well, Matt, anything here to wrap up this football episode of the Hoosiers Sound? We need to give the Hoosiers, the players and staff, a lot of credit. This is the magic of college football. That 6-win mark for teams that aren't in that CFP race does hold some value. It does give you that incentive to keep fighting, to keep playing, to keep pushing. You see the same thing in college basketball tournament bids. So, Matt, as we wrap up here on this Sunday night, any final thoughts that relates to this Indiana football program?
I like that they've shown some fight. I like that instead of laying down and not getting another win the rest of the season, that they fought at home against Wisconsin to kind of win. Not make the season, not only just win, but not make the season a complete disaster. I like that. But it's still been kind of a disaster and still has all the recipes of being just a complete program reverser, right? An ugly mark on the program, or it could be a spark, right?
It's just funny to see. Oh yeah,
it's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, and it's why even going back to September, October, I'm like, there's enough here that's intriguing to me, that's interesting me in watching this team play during this every Saturday afternoon, that we do this, because you sit here and you're like, there's something there. The arm strength is there with the quarterbacks, the athleticism is there with the receivers, the durability is the power, and the fight is there with the running backs, and the way they're able to read the lanes when they're given to them. And we're just sitting here and going, and then you go into Maryland and get crushed, and you face Rutgers and get crushed, and you almost get your rear ends embarrassed against Akron. Well, you did get embarrassed. You ended up winning, but you got embarrassed against Akron. And so, yeah, that's just the thing. But, for me, man, I mean, I'm just looking here, and it cracks me up every time I see Michigan and Ohio State play a Big Ten West team, right? And I go, man, freaking Nebraska. Imagine how rough the Scott Frost era would have been if they were able, if they had to face Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State every single season. Michigan this year beaten Nebraska 45-7. They beat Minnesota 52-10. They beat Purdue 41-13. And Ohio State has handed out similar punishments as has Penn State to other Big Ten West teams. And all I'm saying is, if I'm Tom Allen's agent and I'm trying to scrape together an argument as far as job security is concerned, you just got to point out that it is absolutely ridiculous that Indiana's had to face those three programs every single year, and those three seem to be as better as they've ever been. As they go into this final stretch, with Penn State the only team losing a game among those three, and it came to the Ohio State Buckeyes. So, folks, when it's all said and done, the Hoosiers got the job done. They go to 3-6. They still have that bowl game eligibility to play for the rest of the way. We're going to call that a day as far as football is concerned. We're going to have more coming your way as far as basketball later on this week, but that about wraps it up for our 312th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.